Before Alex Jones was kicked off YouTube and other platforms, he had quite a large audience, and it was December 2nd, 2015, where he caught my attention and probably had one of those break the internet events. Trump appeared as a guest on his program that day, and the large InfoWars audience then knew Alex was all in on Trump. The interview was favorable for Trump, and Trump had told Alex he would not let him down.
I routinely talk to the top generals, special forces, Pentagon currently, out of the Pentagon, CIA, as I know you do, and we'll just leave it at that. There are a lot of people in this government and also retired who don't want to destroy the country. They really know that we've reached the crossroads where the country's done as a third world nation within a few more years. Forget Donald Trump in 4 years. If this happens, we're done. I mean, we're talking about resurrecting the dead here. We could turn it around right now, as you've said properly. You're dead on, sir. You're right. We could turn it around. All the actuaries, all the numbers show it. But it's got to happen the next few years or we're done. And there are globalists that want to have a world government, a system run by select crony capitalists, using socialism at the grassroots to make people dependent. And I've talked to not just high-level folks that have been in government that are on your team, but separately high-level people in government currently that say there's an internal war going on and that you're a manifestation of that. I don't want to get anything inside baseball with you, but I already know the inside baseball. I know now from top people that you actually are for real and you understand you're in danger and you understand what you're doing is epic. It's George Washington level, and you understand that office. So I want to tell you right now, can you speak about the war for the soul of this country that's happening right now and really tell people what's happening and commit to people that you won't Ross Perot under death threats and step down when you're in the lead 2 months from the election?
I just want to finish by saying your reputation's amazing. I will not let you down. You will be very, very impressed, I hope. And I think we'll be speaking a lot, but you'll be looking at me in a year or 2 years. Let's give me a little bit of a time to run things. But a year into office, you'll be saying, wow, I remember that interview. He said he was going to do it, and he did a great job. You'll be very proud of our country.
Well, I'm impressed.
It wasn't until recently that I asked myself, how did Trump end up on InfoWars? Who were the people that put that meeting together and determined it was worth the risk for Trump to gain the InfoWars audience as voters versus the fallout from the mainstream media saying Trump was associating with a conspiracy theorist? This question led me to a video broadcast where Alex Jones let his audience know the military was helping him from very early on in his career.
Different groups. I've had all these, Navy SEALs and Delta Force guys on. They don't tell you who they are when they're on the show, but they go, no, I was like in covert operations in Southeast Asia, or I was in, Europe, or I was here or there. And, I had the local CIA head guy come by and go, listen, Infowars.com, this guy knows what's going on, decompartmentalization, this is really what's going on. And it wasn't that I was even that great of a guy. I was just willing to talk about it. And they kind of made it a joke early on, so it got out big. And I also think there was some psyops by patriots inside. We didn't have a very big audience. I was on a few radio stations here in Texas and things like 1996, 97. I made some films. And then they ordered the Marine Corps wide, and then the Army not to watch Alex Jones videos. Well, suddenly I was going from like 50 orders a day to 500 a day, and it was all going to Marine Corps bases and Army bases.
The U.S. Marines and Army were sending Alex Jones documentaries to their bases for viewing in the late 90s and 2000s. Knowing this, it shouldn't be surprising to learn the answer to the previous question. How did Donald Trump end up on InfoWars? Alex provided us the answer, saying it was the United States Special Operations Command out of Florida.
I know folks that are part of Delta Force, and I know people that are part of covert action in the Defense Department and the CIA. And quite frankly, they've given me authorization to talk about this. I have never been in the CIA. I have never been part of covert operations, but I was basically contacted by groups inside the Special Forces operations in Florida, inside breakaway groups inside the Central Intelligence Agency, and groups basically behind American industry that wanted to defeat the globalists and they're planning to bankrupt America.
But this is what got Donald Trump to say, I got to be on this guy's show?
Donald Trump was advised by the Special Forces Command out of Florida. They said...
To go on your program.
I mean, that's who actually... let's just say it. The enemy already knows all this. Let me just say this. Everybody listening knows I'm telling the truth. Special Operations Command in Florida, the Delta Force, Army, Black Ops. Army's the oldest thing in America. It's before the Constitution, anything. they said, sir, you need to go with Alex Jones, and you need to rally the troops. And they briefed him. They showed him the documents, and they said, we need you to run. And the Delta Force basically asked Trump. Delta Force, founded by General Boykin and Schumacher and people like Dr. C. Pachenik of Psychological Operations for the CIA.
That's exactly what all our sources from the FBI and the Pentagon, which means the CIA connected Pentagon, that's Special Operations, that's what they told us. And these are the good guys that continue to give us good info. Doesn't mean the whole thing's good.
Two names stick out that Jones mentioned: Lieutenant General William G. Boykin and Dr. Steve Pachenik. This wasn't the first time Boykin was mentioned by Alex Jones. During an interview years ago with his associate Michael Maloof, former senior security policy analyst in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Maloof mentions Boykin as a source. A brief note on Maloof: he attends the New Horizon conference in Iran with Alexander Dugin. The Department of Justice has identified New Horizon as an Iranian intelligence recruiting event. I mention this because it raises questions about Maloof and Boykin, such as why would Boykin associate with someone like Maloof, and why would Maloof associate with Alexander Dugin, a Putin ally?
More. Now, there are, as Congressman West mentioned to me, there are some zipper issues that have occurred even among the higher ranks. But as General Boykin told me, this is unprecedented to have so many flag officers, so many four-star generals removed in such a short period of time.
Maloof, he has talked to all these major generals, you name it, brigadier generals, the list goes on, who've confirmed what our Navy SEAL sources have said on record and off record, what our military police sources have said, what Fort Hood PSYOPs has told us that we've confirmed. They've given us good intel over and over again. These are good men. I've met them.
Boykin was commander of Delta Force, 1st Special Forces Command Airborne, which includes the Force Psychological Operations Group, the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School, which trains SOCOM officers, and he finished his career as Undersecretary for Defense Intelligence 2003 to 2007. Boykin is on the Executive Committee for the Council of National Policy, and two of Alex's other associates, Steve Bannon and Jerome Corsi, are also members of CMP. Boykin was also featured in a documentary with Jones, and it is likely they have communicated with each other given how Alex and Pachenik talk about Boykin. Boykin publicly endorsed Trump for his 2016 and 2020 campaigns. Given that Alex Jones and his associates have mentioned Boykin multiple times and the ties InfoWars has to the military, we cannot ignore when Jones has mentioned that InfoWars is the tip of the spear, or that it is in an information war against the globalists. SOCOM, Delta Force, and 1st Special Forces Command symbols are spear and arrowheads. In 21st century warfare, information operations and its subset psychological operations are largely deployed before kinetic action is. This is why InfoWars is the tip of the spear, and Jones does not hide he is at war with the globalist, which is the Anglo-American establishment, according to him in a 2008 RT interview.
InfoWars is the tip of the spear. Supporting our information warfare operation against the globalists. Because we're warning people about very serious things that are happening in the world. We have the Anglo-American establishment based in England and the United States that has enslaved our people. And they are using our wealth, our military, our name to carry out this globalist empire, this unipolar world, instead of having a multipolar world.
The picture is starting to emerge that InfoWars is the information operations tip of the spear for a faction inside and outside our government, represented by elements of special forces and the intelligence community, who are looking to break up the Anglo-American establishment, or what Alex more often calls them, the globalists. Just in case there is any doubt as to whether Alex misspoke about factions of the military helping him and Trump, here he is again, mentioning how Trump came to power.
Trump was saying, who do we get to do this? So there's a real war going on in the elite right now. Don't think Trump just did this on his own. He was recruited by patriots and U.S. intelligence agencies, for a fact. Trump was recruited by the U.S. Army. That's a big secret, but you deserve to know what the Democrats already know.
Trump was recruited by SOCOM, according to Jones, and the military has been working with Jones since the late 90s. Alex has family members in the CIA, and he employs retired military and special forces members, such as Russian-born Daria Karpova, whom he hired for Russian translation services. We can now see that InfoWars is deeply tied into the intelligence community and power structures in the United States that placed Trump in office. That was accomplished with information warfare, partly conducted by Alex's InfoWars operation, staffed by retired military and special forces personnel.
My family doing things like helping take in East German defectors, okay? Whenever I go to a family reunion, half the people in the room are former retired CIA.
We've got a lot of folks work here at the office that were in the military, and some of them were, involved in not just your standard special operations stuff, but some of the most elite groups out there. But Daria is one of the only people ever, not just in your regular special forces, but all the way at the top of it. And she's a great patriot, and she's a Russian-American whose parents came here to leave communism, and she's a great patriot.
Obey me.
That's right. I get all my orders from the Russian right here.
Going back to Special Forces Commander Lieutenant General Boykin, it wasn't just Alex and Maloof talking about him. Dr. Steve Pachenik mentioned him as well, saying he was involved in the revolution that placed Trump in power. Pachenik is another associate of Jones that has Russian ties. Pachenik was born in communist Cuba, speaks Russian and English because his mother was Russian. He was a member of the highly influential Council on Foreign Relations going back to the mid-90s, and was previously with the U.S. State Department as Deputy Assistant Secretary under Henry Kissinger, as well as having served as a consultant to the RAND Corporation and the United States Institute for Peace.
Who indicted the CIA by saying they were a legacy of ashes and they were a disaster. This is the first president in the 21st century to say, I will not allow any form of corruption to exist in our voting system. Simple as that. And I will remain in power. He utilized all the men and women in our intelligence community in the White House, General Nakasone, General Keith Alexander, Boykin, Special Forces. I mean, these are names that I've told you about before, but they're quiet. And these are the real heroes. And unfortunately, as Adam Curry said in one of his shows, he said they're not going to televise the revolution. And that comes from an old song in 1971, as you know.
Jones, Maloof, and Pachenik have all mentioned Lieutenant General Boykin. We know Jones wants to destroy the Anglo-American establishment. We know Maloof attends Iranian intelligence recruiting events with such titles as The Demise of America, while associating with Putin allies. And we know Pachenik is no aficionado of the Constitution and supports devolution, as we shall now see.
Let me be very frank. I have never been an aficionado of the Constitution. The reason for it, it's outdated. And what's happening now is we're coming into a new realism, a hyper-realism, where the states become more important. The devolution of power from the federal government, I told you, is happening very quickly.
Pachenik mentioned Boykin in the context of the revolution not being televised, and certain people preferring to keep quiet. However, Boykin is not a ghost, and we can form a picture of who he is via his associations, which we will examine presently. Would you be surprised to know that Boykin is a close associate with a Greek national named Nicholas Papanikolaou, who in turn is a close associate of former KGB General Vladimir Yakunin? Both Boykin and Papanikolaou are members of the Knights Hospitallers of the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem Knights of Malta. They are also members of the Oak Initiative, whose founder is Rick Joyner. Rick is a fellow Knight Hospitaller, and the Knights organization traces its history back to Russia. Papanikolaou and former KGB General Yakunin co-founded the World Public Forum Dialogue of Civilizations, or WPF-DOC for short. Yakunin was interviewed in person by the Council on Foreign Relations, which was a partner to the WPF-DOC, and they called Yakunin a close associate of Putin.
Officially on the record. Today our speaker is Vladimir Yakunin. For those who aren't familiar with him, he is the president of the state-run company Russian Railways. So he really is the guy who makes the trains run on time.
Unlike the traffic here.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry we can't do something about our airline system here, so you'd be... But He is a former first secretary of the Soviet Permanent Rep Office to the United Nations. He's a former deputy minister of transportation. He's a close associate of Prime Minister Vladimir Putin's and considered to be one of Russia's really true insiders.
Yakunin was also interviewed by Tiberio Graziani's Italian Journal of Geopolitics, where he stated the time for mere dialogue was over, and it was time for exerting controlled influence over social processes. We can assume that influence would be in support of a Eurasian empire, which is something Yakunin advocates. Graziani is on the High Council of Alexander Dugin's International Eurasia Movement, which calls for a multipolar world order, just like Alex Jones was advocating for on RT in 2008, and for the integration of post-Soviet spaces into the Eurasian Union. What is particularly interesting about Boykin's association with Papanikolaou is that both men were in Rhodes, Greece during October 2, 2011, for a Knights Hospitaller ceremony. Just 4 days later, also in Rhodes, Papanikolaou was meeting with Yakunin at the WPF DOC event. This raises some questions such as, was Boykin in contact with retired KGB General Yakunin? Was Alexander Dugin there as well? Dugin regularly travels to Rhodes. Yakunin is an important figure not only because of his railway business, he also used to be a diplomat to the UN, which might explain why UNESCO is a partner to the WPF DOC, that is because of Yakunin's connections to the UN. Yakunin is also editor and publisher of 2 Dugin anthologies and was meeting with Dugin going back to at least 2004. That group is organized by Putin-endorsed Center for National Glory of Russia, a partner organization to the WPF DOC, where Yakunin serves as chairman of the board of trustees. Yakunin regularly met with Putin, and probably still does, when he was a Russian railway boss. He is also associated with Putin through the Ozera Dhaka Cooperative. Another Boykin, Papanikolaou, and Joyner associate is Ted Baer, who is also a member of the Knights organization and was working with Yakunin's wife at events such as the World Congress of Families and World Public Forum, which are sponsored by people like Yakunin and Putin and Dugin associate Alexander Malafiev. I believe we now have a decent picture of Boykin via his associates, and we can understand somewhat why his name is being mentioned by Jones, Malouf, and Pachenik, all individuals looking to break the current establishment. They said the military put Trump into power and mentioned Boykin. Jones would later advocate using the military to keep Trump in power.
Organizing violence and moving, and I can see they're moving with it behind the scenes. It's time for covert action, and it just has to happen. So if people kind of see InfoWars as a bellwether where the people sit, I'm just saying I think the president and the military has to do what it has to do at this point. I mean, it would be negligent to sit here at this point.
Concluding part 1, we learned that United States Special Operations Command put Trump into contact with Alex Jones. We also learned InfoWars is likely the tip of the spear for factions of the military and intelligence community, and that Lieutenant General Boykin was mentioned by Jones and his associates who are questionable in terms of their loyalty to this country. And Boykin, while he might be silent, is associated with individuals close to a KGB general. Lastly, it wasn't only Jones that advocated using the military in support of Trump. Someone much closer to Lieutenant General Boykin was suggesting using the military to take over the United States before Trump even came to power.
So I think these are unfolding. And what I saw when I saw martial law come into America was military law. I saw it being an answer. And I believe right now, if we're going to go that way, if our present leaders are not going to hear, not going to defend our country, not defend our borders, and open the door to the kind of terrible things I saw, then, you know, martial law is going to seem like a reprieve. And the real key is who the marshal is. We need to start praying now, if this is going to happen, that the Lord have the right marshal with wisdom, with a love for freedom. You know, I would hope an absolute commitment to our Constitution. And you say, well, how could anyone who takes over the country under martial law have a love for our Constitution? In extreme crisis, sometimes you have to do extreme things. That doesn't mean they can't move us back towards that. Bring order, bring control, bring the defense that we need in our country and the protection of our citizens that are needed. and then bring us back to the republic and restore the republic that we're called to be. That's my prayer. I believe that can happen. I believe all of the things we've done to undermine our Constitution can be corrected and changed. So, but I'm praying right now, whoever the marshal is, please give him great wisdom, resolve, courage, everything else needed for these times. And as I started telling friends for a long time, that no election's going to get the right person in there that can restore us, because the system is so broken, so undermined right now, the whole system. I believe our only hope is a military takeover, martial law, and that the most crucial element of that is who the marshal is going to be.
Слава нашим доблестным вооруженным силам! За Россию! За победу! Ура!
It was only 8 days after Donald Trump was interviewed by Alex Jones on InfoWars that Alex's current and future associates at the time traveled to Moscow, Russia. Former Defense Intelligence Agency head under President Obama, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, was most famously part of this entourage. The purpose of the event at face value was Russian television's, RT for short, 10-year anniversary celebration. RT put on a conference as well as an associated dinner, and the event was famous not because of RT's 10-year anniversary. It was because Michael Flynn was paid $45,000 in fees for speaking at the event, where his son traveled with him, and more importantly, because he dined next to Russian President Vladimir Putin, as well as former FSB director and Russian Minister of Defense Sergei Ivanov. Interestingly, and we will properly discuss Alexander Dugin later, it is worth mentioning Dugin is associated with Ivanov. Ivanov and Vladimir Yakunin sit on the board of trustees for the Center for National Glory of Russia, which organizes the Travelers to Rhodes group. Both men were also working with, in some degree, with the Council on Foreign Relations, which Dugin hints in his last War of the World Island was a double game sanctioned by Putin. Dugin also identified Ivanov as someone along with the Army and GRU that would advance Eurasian geopolitical objectives versus the CFR Atlantist objectives, which had active supporters in Russia. Months before Flynn was in Moscow, Major General Vallely was there as well. However, his purpose was arranging a meeting between Trump and Putin at the future G20 meeting in 2017. Vallely is a friend of Flynn's, Jerome Corsi, who is a CMP member, and former Washington bureau chief for InfoWars. Corsi aided Jones substantially in pushing the QAnon psychological operation on Americans. Vallely was also a friend of psychological operations expert Lieutenant Colonel Aquino, who we will discuss later.
Do you personally know or have you had interactions with General Michael Flynn?
Yes.
You guys know each other pretty well?
Fairly well.
And have you
In fact, before I was in Moscow a couple months before he went over, so I talked to him before he left. And then when he left to go over there and go to the 10th banquet of RT, Russian television, and he sat with Putin. I had been in Moscow 2 months earlier than that, setting up the meeting between Trump and Putin, which I did while I was there. And that was at the G20 conference in 2017. So, yes, and Michael Flynn must be vindicated. He was one of the individuals that the deep state attacked first, as you remember.
I know Dr. Jerome Corsi as well, and they really railroaded him. I mean, he was looking at, he would have basically died in jail unless he lied about the president was the deal, basically. And we all know that even if he did, they still would have rolled on him.
Yeah, I know Jerry. I've done a lot of articles with him.
Going back a couple more years, Flynn was the first DIA director to be invited to Russian military intelligence headquarters, and in 2013 he participated in a 4-day leadership development program and met GRU director Igor Sergun. Naturally, we might ask, what does a 3-star intelligence general have to learn about leadership from Russian military intelligence? I don't claim to know what the purpose of the meeting really was, but I believe there is reason to question it wasn't really about leadership, like a corporate leadership conference Cisco or HP would put on, for example. Not even corporate conferences are what they say. It is about making connections and climbing the ladder. Flynn has many interesting connections. Alex Jones would meet him in person before January 6th, and their first public meeting was an awkward exchange. Patrick Byrne was there too with Flynn. Like Flynn had told Alex he wanted no public appearances with him, as if it would foil some plan. The awkwardness certainly wasn't because Flynn was hesitant to associate with so-called conspiracy theorists like Jones. For example, Flynn regularly joins a Miss Mel K, real name Melody Krell, who is a former Mar-a-Lago employee, adult film star, and alt-media personality that got her start with the help of Hollywood people, getting her embedded into the QAnon alt-media. That said, Flynn would go on to give Alex an interview on January 5th, where Flynn was saying the president had the power to overrule the courts in the interest of national security.
Crazy day, huh?
It is a crazy day.
You scared? We're gonna win.
What?
No, I mean, you scared? Take my hand? You guys are funny, man.
This is January 5th, the night of we're about to go into another one of these constitutional dates, January 6th tomorrow, and we still don't have an outcome for the. I have actually been part of taking over countries. Everybody in this country, everybody in the world knows that this election on the 3rd of November was a total ripoff. It was a fraudulent election. We have had foreign interference from multiple countries. I'll rattle them off here if you want to get into that. And Donald Trump was the clear winner. For the next 4 days after the 3rd of November, from about the 4th through the 7th, 8th of November, they just started stuffing the ballot boxes, and everybody knows it, and they got caught. They got caught with their hands in the proverbial cookie jar, so that's where we are.
Gotta go. We'll finish this up, General Flynn. This is an amazing interview. 3 branches, co-equal, legislative.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I know the direction you're going to go.
Well, my point is,
this is super important. We have 3 co-equal branches of government, okay? But if you read the Constitution, there's one person that gets voted on by the majority of people in this country.
President.
That's the President of the United States.
He's the leader.
When the President puts his hand on the Bible, when he takes his oath of office, there's only one person in this country that takes that oath of office. I've taken.
No, I agree. It's not a unitary executive. The president has like 1% above it.
The president of the United States. So you have 3 co-equal branches, but the president is actually he's not a branch. He is a person voted on by the majority of this country, and it's not by happenstance that the oath of office that the president of the United States takes. If you go back and you look at the founding fathers and the arguments that they had, actually, and for those that want to dig into it, it's Federalist Paper number 73. And you look at it as to why they chose those words. Because the President of the United States has a responsibility to protect the Constitution. Everybody else can scream about it. The courts can say, we're not going to do anything about it, like the Supreme Court did. But the President has the responsibility, the duty, and the authority to act, and it's above the others because there's something called national security.
Alex talked about Flynn much earlier than 2020. In 2017, during an interview with Dugan, Alex mentioned Flynn, saying Flynn said Russia wants to work with the United States. Even earlier, he was speaking with Michael Maloof about Flynn, where in the same interview, Maloof names Vallely as a contact. And Jones mentions the name Lieutenant General McInerney, which is an interesting tidbit because in the final days of the Trump presidency, Alex claimed something along the lines of he didn't know McInerney and derided him as an old, senile general. This was in the context of a viral video going around with McInerney claiming such things as special operations took Pelosi's laptop. Why would Jones say such things about McInerney when he knows of him? My guess is it had something to do with the plan to keep Trump in power collapsing and Alex lashing out at these old generals and their inability to carry out their plans Alex was in on. I have no solid proof of that. It's just an educated guess based on the research I've accumulated so far.
And then we started working with Russia. We first reported it 4.5 years ago. People didn't believe it. Now it's mainstream news. And so General Flynn and others are saying Russia wants to work with us. They're not a threat. Let's destroy the EU. It's unelected. It's evil. Let's free Europe. Let's have a bunch of trade. Let's get China under control. And let's actually have real peace. Now, we'll still have our militaries. We'll still have issues. I'm sure we'll still have problems. But We're not going to try to conquer Russia or vice versa. This is ridiculous. The globalists are attacking all our countries, trying to make us all poor. Let's get them off our back. In September, General Thomas McInerney admitted the United States helped build ISIS as a result of the Obama administration's backing some of the wrong people.
Go back to Iran.
And that's General Michael T. Flynn, another general, basically saying the same thing.
At the same RT conference as Flynn was Charles Balzman. He was on a panel discussion titled InfoWar, Will There Be a Winner?
Next up, we have Charles Balzman. He is from Russia Insider, and come up. Russia Insider, to put it lightly, Charles has basically dedicated his life to fighting misinformation, especially in terms of Russia and the US. And I think that will come up, of course, in the conversation we're about to have.
Balzman founded the news website Russia Insider in 2014, the same year Russia invaded Ukraine's Crimea. At one point, he asked Putin oligarch and associate of Dugin, Alexander Malafy, for money. Balzman's Russia Insider publishes Dugin's articles, as well as InfoWars' Fourth Hour host Jay Dyer's articles via Balzman's Russia Faith website. Russia Insider also features Russian Foreign Intelligence-directed Strategic Culture Foundation articles. The U.S. State Department identified SCF as being tasked by SVR in an official report back in August 2020. A short aside on this, 21st Century Mind Wars has conducted independent research on SCF and found that InfoWars employees and hosts such as Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, Greg Reese, and Jay Dyer had relationships with SCF, as well as other Russian intelligence-run disinformation news websites like globalresearch.ca. Alex, Paul, and Jay Dyer would distance themselves from these organizations. However, Greg Reese is still using SCF articles in his reports for InfoWars, and in one specific instance, over 500,000 Americans viewed a report he did on Putin with SCF material. That report focused on Oliver Stone's documentary on Putin, and interestingly, at the RT conference on the same panel as Balzman, was Stone business associate Peter Kuznick.
And then we have Peter Kuznick. He, of course, together with filmmaker Oliver Stone, co-authored the Showtime documentary film series and a book also titled The Untold History of the United States.
People of the West are being told that Putin is so bad that nuclear war is a reasonable option to get rid of him. And if you think this may be true, I urge you first to take the time to watch Oliver Stone's interview with Vladimir Putin and see for yourself if this one man is worth starting a war over. The mainstream talking point is that Vladimir Putin is a killer because he was in the KGB. But what they won't tell you is that he resigned from the KGB because he did not agree with their methods. He described communism as a blind alley, far away from the mainstream of civilization. He is a patriot of old Russia, the 1,000-year melting pot of many cultures, and for his entire leadership has sought peace with NATO. In 2012, the U.S. State Department openly meddled in Russia's elections, and in 2014, they orchestrated a violent overthrow of the Ukrainian government in plain view. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
Reese is using Russian foreign intelligence disinformation on Americans 2 years after the State Department report came out. 21st Century Mind Wars has contacted him about this and received no reply. We have also contacted the State Department as well and also received no reply. Other government agencies have been notified and no response as well. We feel this is important because the State Department called out news organizations using SCF material like globalresearch.ca, but they failed to call out InfoWars, which suggests InfoWars is indeed protected by a faction of the intelligence community, as discussed in Part 1 of our series. It should be no surprise after hearing this that Russia Insider denies that Russian intelligence unit Fancy Bear and their handle Guccifer 2.0 hacked the DNC and transferred the material to Julian Assange. He was also a speaker at the RT conference, which spawned the Pizzagate psyop through people like Roger Stone, Jack Posobiec, Mike Flynn, and Alex Jones. It should also be no surprise that both Russia Insider and InfoWars feature Zero Hedge articles as well. Zero Hedge itself has been called out by U.S. intelligence officials for using SCF articles. Former AP correspondent and investigative journalist Seth Hatina reported that Zero Hedge is owned by ABC Media Ltd. Out of Bulgaria and managed by Krasimir Ivanjiski, the father of the founder of Zero Hedge, Daniel. Seth states, Krasimir served in the Bulgarian Ministry of Foreign Trade and served in the military before beginning his career as a journalist. The main mission of the Bulgarian press during Ivanjiski's days as a reporter was to disseminate Communist Party propaganda. He was also a member since 1974 in the International Organization of Journalists, a front organization that a declassified CIA study described as an instrumentality of Soviet propaganda. Hatina reached out to a senior former Bulgarian government source, and that source told Mr. Hatina they suspect Zero Hedge is likely tied to Bulgarian and Russian intelligence. Hatina also reached out to an academic with ties to the Bulgarian government who concurred with this assessment as well. Moreover, Rand Corp says Zero Hedge frequently echoes the Kremlin line. Back to Balsman, he speaks fluent Russian, he worked in Russia for 20 years, and it is his father who originally brought him there when his father was employed as the bureau chief for the Associated Press in the Soviet Union. Balsman is also married to a Russian woman, and we can safely assume he has deep ties to Russia. After being inside the Capitol on January 6th, he left his house in the States for the protection of Russia. Balsman is also connected to InfoWars and Alex Jones. He was on InfoWars a few years ago in an interview that seemed forced, like Alex Jones didn't choose him as a guest. Balsman's writers for Russia Insider, such as Eric Stryker and Andrew Anglin, are associated with Dugin's Traditionalist Workers Movement, Stryker having been in a group at Charlottesville with the Traditionalist Workers' Party branded shields. The New York Times said of Balsman that Russian analysts who have followed Mr. Balsman's work say it has the hallmarks of a disinformation project. Olga Lotman, a senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis who researches Russian propaganda campaigns, said his messaging merged seamlessly with that of Mr. Putin's government. Russia Insider appears, she said, to be a classic Russian influence operation.
And Charles Balsman is here with us in studio, Russia-Insider, and he was here with a national Russian film crew today. He wasn't even trying to get on air. I was familiar with his popular site and YouTube channels. He was very well-spoken, and I thought, hey, we never see you in front of the camera. You ought to come out here and explain how you're international business, and you've been all over Russia and all over Europe, and what you think of this whole situation with the attempts of the deep state to claim that Russia runs everything in America and that I'm run by Russia. I think it's probably been 9 years since I've had a Russian film crew here. Again, the media tries to act like if you talk to a Russian, you must be an evil person. How crazy is that? Hillary was selling the Russians uranium and things, but part in Europe. I mean, describe why you have such a background, why you were in Russia.
Okay. I lived in Russia as a child. My dad was a journalist there. He was the bureau chief for the Associated Press. That's the world's largest news agency.
It's all really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and
so it's funny, you were a business guy, successful, went back to your dad's roots.
Yeah, I guess I had the journalism bug in me somehow. Yeah, so I got to see Russia in the deep communist days.
Now, your dad wasn't
Brezhnev era.
Wasn't working for the CIA or anything? Because, back then, if somebody was the head of the AP in Russia, they probably were.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't know. I never thought of him as that kind of a person, but I guess nothing's out of the... Alex, I want to also say something about your interpretation of it. So in 2015, that's the first time you came across my radar, because we were very interested in Western media, which were also getting it right about Russia, and very, very few people were. Many more people are getting it right today. For example, I could mention Tucker Carlson, I think, basically gets the Russia story right these days, right? So that's a big, because
it's the truth. But I want to be clear. I don't blame the Russians for the Soviets and the communists, because I know the history books, and that's PhD level, but it's a fact that the British Empire and the leftists in the U.S. funded 100,000 Russian immigrants, people that had come from Russia, to reinvade Russia and overthrow it at a weak point at the end of World War I. And so when you talk about America doing all this, again, it truly is this international criminal cabal that's doing it. And I'm not trying to let America out of some of the bad things it's done in the recent decade to Russia. I'm just simply stating we have to point out that this is literally the same cancer. I don't have any alliance with Russia. I'm not in bed with Russia. But I recognize Russia has the same globalist enemies. No. We should naturally be allied, but that's not what they want. They want to make Russia the #1 enemy. They want naturally do we see, as I had Steve Pachinik on a few days ago, an alliance between the United States and Russia would be common sense in the world today. The resources, the Christian culture, the rise.
The next Jones associate at the event was former chief of the CIA's Soviet Foreign Policy Branch, Ray McGovern. McGovern has been on the InfoWars program a dozen or so times. He is also an associate of Bossman via the World Russia Forum. McGovern helped create Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, or VIPS for short, which is filled with other retired CIA and NSA associates of Jones, like William Binney. McGovern's connections are very interesting, such as Unity 4J, and they will be covered more in another section.
So far away a place with no real relevance to the U.S.
And Ray, just to interject, again, former top CIA analyst Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush joins us, a 35, 40-year veteran at the highest levels of global intelligence. Watching it that day with CNN announcing that Russia had just attacked Georgia for no reason, and reading the fine print that they had attacked Russian military bases in South Ossetia and Abkhazia and murdered them en masse, it shows the sheer insanity that our media went with that and said, yeah, let's send in NATO till the Russians threatened nuclear attacks on NATO bases, and then Cheney backed off. As it turned out, from the intel I had, correct me if I'm wrong, that the Georgian president had been basically, like Saddam was encouraged to go into Kuwait, quietly told, yeah, go ahead and do this, we've got your back. What were they thinking there, out of the blue, to just attack Russian military bases? Thank God it didn't escalate more. And then when I said, I'm glad the Russians are showing restraint pulling out of Georgia, they had all the neocons come out and claim, I'm a Russian agent. when literally both sides of my family came over on the Mayflower. I mean, that is how sick this has gotten. I'm a traitor. You're a traitor. You know, they said that about you because we don't want nuclear war, Ray.
In addition to Flynn, Bossman, and McGovern, we also have another speaker at the event with interesting connections. That is Philip Giraldi, who is a former CIA officer and national security editor of the UNS Review. The UNS Review has Andrew Anglin and Eric Stryker as contributors, just like Russia Insider. It also has Dugan and Assange associate Israel Shamir as a contributor too. Shamir wrote for the same newspaper as Dugan called Den, which changed its name to Zavdra after the coup in '91. That August '91 coup was supported by Dugan and Den to prevent the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Giraldi is also a Dugan and Malouf associate via the Quds Force Iranian intelligence recruiting event called New Horizon. Giraldi, McGovern, and Julian Assange, whom our government says was working with Russian military intelligence via Fancy Bear and their Guccifer 2.0 persona, were all on the same panel discussion titled Security or Surveillance.
The game for privacy is gone. It's gone. The mass surveillance is here to stay. The Anglo-American alliance is so pervasive in terms of mass surveillance of domestic and international telecommunications that while some experts can achieve practical privacy for themselves for a limited number of operations, and terrorists are experts, that it's gone for the rest of the population.
Going back to Flynn, during his Q&A session, which was after his discussion with RT host Sophie, he called on Alex's friend's wife, Stacey Herbert. Stacey's husband is Max Kaiser, and both co-hosted a program on RT together, which was canceled after Russia's latest Ukraine invasion. Kaiser is an associate of Putin, and he had relayed a simple message from Putin to Alex before. Kaiser tried at one point to fund Alex with 10,000 bitcoins, but Alex said he lost the computer with the bitcoins. After the 2022 Russia invasion sanctions, Kaiser deleted 1,500 pro-Russia tweets. I mentioned Stacey being called on by Flynn because I don't know if I can accept it as a coincidence. Flynn's public visit was portrayed as somewhat of a debate. Perhaps he really disagreed with the people there, or perhaps that was a show that was manufactured with the help of people like Stacey, who worked for RT.
One more question.
Let me back over here. Way in the back, way in the back.
Every time Sophie asked you about Saudi Arabia, you kept on mentioning Iran and adding that in. How many Shia attacked us on 9/11, or how many Shia attacked us on the 7/7 bus bombings in London? How many Shia were involved in the Paris attacks?
there seems a bit of dishonesty about how we treat the whole region, is that we keep on saying, oh, it's the Iranians causing ISIS and causing Libya and causing the disaster in Syria. It seems like, yes, there are obviously in Iraq.
Again, I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. Max Kaiser and his trustworthy sidekick are in the freezing. I guess it's got to be like 9, 10 o'clock at night in Moscow. They're out there in the freezing sleet with just gorgeous images of the Orthodox Russian architecture. They're in Red Square with the Kremlin and the Royal Palace in the background. Max Kaiser, thank you so much. Of course, MaxKaiser.com, investigative journalist, author, Bitcoin baron. Thank you so much for joining us, Max.
Yeah, Alex, can you hear me? Just check on sound. Sounds good?
Yes, sir, and the video is spectacular. Talk about science fiction.
Fantastic video. Here we got Lenin's tomb right here. Right, and over this yellow orangey building here, that is the Kremlin, of course, and that would be where Putin has his office, right in that building, right up there that we're looking at above the wall there of the Kremlin. So on the other side of that wall is the Kremlin.
You've got Stacy there. I believe that is, or I can't see her. Somebody else there.
No, that's Stacy. Show the Oshunka. This is a Russian hat. Just got this. Beautiful.
So now you're in Moscow. Well, tell us what's happening in Moscow, and then let's get into the world economy. You said it's a mixed bag.
Vladimir Putin says to say hello, by the way.
Did that really happen?
Oh, yeah. He said, when you see Alex, tell him I said hello.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I better not go over there, though.
I'm going to interview Putin this year.
Really?
Yeah, going over there.
Now I am interested in this because I was told by the head of RT America before they even launched it, like 8, 9 years ago. Putin's a big listener, and by the way, he likes how you play. We actually got reached out to years ago by some people, and I checked. It was like, yes, Putin wants to come on, but he wants to talk about hunting because you're from Texas, and I was just like,
I noticed you like to go bare-chested now.
Unbelievable. The White House got in touch with RT 2 years ago and said, do not have him back on anymore if you want to keep your license in this country.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that's what I was told. And they never had me back on, which I don't even care about. I mean, I think when I've been on with Max Kaiser, that can still get on.
Concluding part 2 of our series and recapping a bit, the picture is beginning to emerge that the ecosystem associated with InfoWars is clearly working against the Anglo-American geopolitical objectives. The media largely missed the greater story around the RT 10-year anniversary event, hyper-focusing on Flynn and neglecting the others there and their connections. In part 1, we learned a faction of the military and intelligence community was using InfoWars as a spearhead in a war against the Anglo-American establishment. One of the generals mentioned as aiding this agenda was close with individuals working with a prominent KGB general. Flynn was also connected to Vallely. He was in Russia working on getting Putin and Trump together. Vallely also comes from a psychological operations background and famously co-authored the Mind War paper with Lieutenant Colonel Aquino, who was an admitted Satanist and rumored to be in contact with QAnon forum owner Mr. Watkins, as reported by investigative journalist Dave Troy. Vallely was also connected to McInerney, who called for martial law with Vallely. Vallely would also pen an article to Russia Beyond saying Trump wouldn't take a confrontational approach to Russia. Ray McGovern used his voice to defend Julian Assange, who with Russian military intelligence helped release the hacked DNC data. The result of that relationship spawned the Pizzagate psychological operation, which resulted in an armed man going into a pizza shop trying to save non-existent child sex slaves. The Victim Impact Assessment report mentioned InfoWars, yet the PSYOP perpetrators remained free and unpunished. Giraldi also defended Assange, writing for Russia Insider that the GRU didn't hack the DNC. Balsman republishes McGovern, Dugan, Giraldi, Jones, Dyer, and others because they all support Russia's geopolitics. Giraldi with Malouf both attend the New Horizon event in Iran, which our DOJ has warned about being an Iranian intelligence recruiting event. They do this because Dugan states Russia's goal is to include Iran in a Eurasian alliance to get access to warm water ports. Stacy Kaiser also defended Iran at the RT conference in congruence with this goal, and both her and Max Kaiser are connected to InfoWars. There are more relationships to explore here, and those will be covered in a future installment. The important point is, Alex Jones and his associates have made it clear they are fighting the globalists, and Russia has the same enemy as they do. Less often do we hear who the globalists are. But Jones said in the 2008 RT interview, they are the Anglo-American establishment, just like Assange says. They won't quite say the United States is the enemy because that would be treason, and they know how to walk a fine line. But in the world of geopolitics, where the game is admittedly zero-sum, as mentioned by Dugan and Brzezinski, you are either supporting the Western powers or the Eastern powers, the former dominated by the United States, and the latter by Russia and China. A loss by one is a gain by another.